My name is Celeste Morgan. I'm 33 years old, and I'll never forget the moment the truth detonated like a bomb in that mahogany-paneled lawyer's office. The room was silent, not just quiet, dead silent, like the air had been sucked out. My sister, Vanessa, normally so poised and sharp, stared down at the yellowing document the lawyer had just placed in front of us, her face drained of color. My mother clutched her Chanel purse so tightly her nails left crescent marks on the leather. Mr. Halberd, our family's lawyer for over 2 decades, adjusted his glasses and said it softly, but it struck like thunder. "This changes everything." I didn't understand at first, but then I saw it, the seal, the date, the signature. My grandfather's real will, hidden, buried, forgotten, until now. Vanessa whispered, "This has to be some kind of mistake." But it wasn't. The business empire, our family's pride and legacy, that had been handed to Vanessa, praised as her birthright, was never meant for her. The truth had just uncoiled like a serpent from the shadows. She was never the rightful heir. And me? The invisible daughter, the one they'd always underestimated, the one they dismissed because I studied history instead of market trends. It was mine all along. If you've ever been blindsided by the people who were supposed to love you, you're not alone. Take a second right now to like this video, drop a comment below if you've ever discovered a family secret that shattered your world, and don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next will leave you breathless. It all started 6 months earlier, with one unexpected phone call from the woman who had never, in my entire life, told me the full truth. 6 months before that moment in the lawyer's office, I was just trying to keep my head down, working late hours at the History Museum downtown, building quiet exhibitions that no one in my family ever cared to visit. That night, my phone rang with a name I hadn't seen pop up in months, Lorraine Morgan, my mother. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed. "Celeste, darling, we need you home this weekend. Family meeting. It's important." Before I could respond, she'd already hung up. That Saturday, I drove up the winding driveway of my childhood home, a mansion built on polished stone, old money, and cold affection. As usual, Vanessa's BMW was already parked out front. Mine, an aging Civic, looked like a punchline next to it. Dinner was tense. Fake smiles, polite silence, Vanessa in her designer suit, our parents clinking wine glasses like we were some perfect Norman Rockwell painting. Then my father cleared his throat. "We've decided it's time," he said. "The transition is official. Everything, the company, the assets, the estate, has been signed over to Vanessa." Just like that. No discussion, no hesitation. I stayed composed. "May I ask why now?" My mother smiled with that tight, polished expression she wore like jewelry. "Darling, you've chosen a different path, article museums. You're simply not suited for the demands of our legacy." Then Vanessa chimed in, her tone sugar-coated and sharpened. "Don't worry, sis. We'll find you a role. Maybe in the charity branch or something. Art programs for the less fortunate." I excused myself without a scene. I had mastered the art of silent exits long ago. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that buried deep in a sealed file at our grandfather's law firm was a truth that would unravel every lie they'd built, a DNA clause, a forgotten adoption record, and a bloodline condition that had been deliberately ignored. Because Vanessa Morgan, the heir, the golden child, the chosen one, was never our parents' biological daughter, and I was. They raised her on a throne built on deception, while keeping me on the outside, unaware I held the true key to the empire they tried to bury me beneath. What came next wasn't just shocking, it was war. The morning I walked into Halberd and Finch, I had no idea my family's lies were about to bleed out onto the polished wood of that conference table. The tension in the room was electric. My father sat at the far end, stone-faced. My mother was in pearls, of course, knuckles white as she twisted them. Vanessa sat with her legs crossed confidently, tapping one manicured finger on the leather folder in front of her. She didn't even glance at me as I entered. "Some of us have businesses to run," she muttered. I took a seat without responding. I was used to being treated like a ghost in my own family. Then Mr. Halberd entered, gray-haired, meticulous, and visibly unsettled. He nodded politely, then opened a weathered yellow folder. "Before we begin," he said, adjusting his glasses, "what I'm about to present is not only legally binding, but ethically urgent." He pulled out an old envelope, sealed, dated decades ago, with our grandfather's handwriting on the outside. "It appears," he continued, "that your late father, Mr. Charles Morgan Sr., included an addendum to his will, one that was misfiled for years until it was discovered in our archives during a routine audit." Vanessa's smirk was immediate. "More paperwork? Cute. It doesn't change anything." But it did, because inside that envelope was a clause, a condition tied to the inheritance of Morgan Industries. It stated that after Charles Sr., the company must pass to the eldest biological daughter of the Morgan bloodline, a progressive choice made in 1976 to empower the women in the family, but it came with one requirement: DNA confirmation. My mother's breath caught. Halberd continued, gentler now. Also enclosed were sealed hospital records and legal documents pertaining to a private adoption that took place in April 1989. He slid the documents across the table. Vanessa's lips parted slightly. That's not... But the words wouldn't come. The color drained from her face. "It appears," Halberd said softly, "that Vanessa is not your biological child." The silence was suffocating. I looked at my parents. My father stared straight ahead. My mother blinked rapidly, then whispered, "We never meant for it to come out like this." I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Vanessa? Adopted? The daughter they groomed, praised, crowned, wasn't even blood. And I, the one they dismissed, ignored, underestimated, was the rightful heir. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair screeching back. "You're lying. This is a setup. You're doing this to ruin me." I rose slowly. "I didn't even know this existed until yesterday." "You've always wanted to be me," she screamed. "You were just too weak to do it yourself, so you let a piece of paper do it for you." Mr. Halberd remained calm. "This isn't personal. It's legal. The clause is clear. Celeste is the legal heir to Morgan Industries." Vanessa turned to my parents, desperate. "Tell them it's not true. Tell them I'm yours." But my father couldn't meet her eyes, and my mother just cried. That's when I knew everything had changed, and there was no going back. I didn't drive straight home. I circled the familiar streets of my hometown in silence, letting the chaos from that conference room play again and again in my mind. Vanessa's screams, my mother's tears, the moment my father, stoic, unshakable, couldn't even look at the daughter he raised. And me? I wasn't triumphant. I was wrecked. Because while the truth validated my pain, it also uncovered something far worse. The people I'd spent my whole life trying to win over had built an empire on lies, and now they wanted me to pretend it never happened. When I finally pulled into the estate's long circular driveway, Isabel, the housekeeper who'd always treated me more like a daughter than my own mother did, met me at the door. "They've been fighting," she whispered. "Miss Vanessa broke a vase. Mrs. Morgan locked herself in her room. And your father? He's in the study. Silent." I nodded. "Where's Vanessa now?" Isabel pointed toward the pool house. I found her there, still in the blazer from earlier, drink in hand, eyes puffy but defiant. She didn't look at me as I entered, just let out a low laugh. "Come to gloat?" she said. "Finally got what you always wanted." "No," I replied evenly. "I came for answers." She stood, swaying slightly. "You want answers? Fine. I've known since I was 12. I overheard Mom on the phone whispering about adoption papers and some woman in Georgia. They swore I'd always be theirs, and I believed them. I had to believe them." I blinked. "So, all this time you knew?" She met my eyes then, something raw breaking through. "I knew. And when you were born it terrified me, their miracle child, their real child. I knew if I slipped even once they'd toss me aside like I never mattered." "That's not an excuse, Vanessa," I said quietly. You weaponized their love. You turned it into leverage. You think this is about love? She hissed. This is about power, and if you try to take what's mine, I swear I'll destroy you. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. You don't know this world, Celeste. You don't know how to run a company. You belong in galleries, not boardrooms. You'll choke under the weight of it. Maybe, I replied, but I'd rather fail with integrity than keep something I didn't earn. Don't be naive, she spat. If you don't walk away, I'll drag you through court, through the press, through hell. I stared at the sister I thought I knew, the one I envied, feared, admired, and I saw it clearly for the first time. She wasn't protecting a legacy, she was protecting a lie, and I had a choice. I could stay silent like they taught me, or I could finally step forward, not for revenge, but for truth. I turned to leave. You said I'd choke, I said without looking back. Let's see if you were right. The next morning, I didn't return to the museum. Instead, I took the earliest appointment available at Halberd and Finch, demanding every document, every file, every scrap of information tied to Morgan Industries. If I'm legally the heir, I told Mr. Halberd, then I have a right to know exactly what I'm inheriting. He nodded solemnly, then placed a thick file in front of me. Brace yourself, Miss Morgan, he said. This company isn't what it used to be. Over the next 3 hours, I sat in stunned silence as he and a forensic accountant walked me through the wreckage. $17.3 million in company funds had been quietly siphoned into offshore accounts, most of it under Vanessa's signature. 3 major construction projects were flagged for serious safety violations, with internal reports buried or altered to avoid inspection shutdowns. There were 17 active lawsuits pending against Morgan Industries, ranging from worker injuries to contract fraud to accusations of bribery in obtaining permits. And the worst part? None of it was new. This had been building for years. The elegant empire my family paraded at galas and press conferences was a crumbling facade, held together by secrets, intimidation, and manipulation. And now, all of it was legally mine. I walked out of that law office with a USB drive full of evidence and a pit in my stomach that felt like stone. I wasn't just inheriting wealth or a title. I was inheriting a mess soaked in legal liability and moral compromise. At home, I sat alone in my small apartment and stared at my reflection in the window. I wasn't trained for this. I didn't know how to manage a construction empire. But I knew right from wrong, and I knew that walking away now meant leaving hundreds of employees behind to sink with a ship they had no hand in steering. So I called the only person I trusted to give it to me straight, Gabriella, my best friend and museum colleague. I need your honest opinion, I told her. If you found out you inherited a corrupt empire from people who never valued you, would you fight to fix it? She didn't hesitate. I'd burn it down and rebuild it, in my name, on my terms. Her words hit me like lightning. That night, I opened the company's internal server and began reviewing names, roles, departments. I requested a tour of the headquarters. I made notes, I highlighted patterns, I flagged every file Vanessa had tried to bury. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew this much. If the Morgan name was going to mean anything again, I'd have to redefine it. Not with deceit, not with power, but with truth. I returned to the Morgan estate 2 days later, not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a woman demanding truth. Isabel opened the door like she'd been waiting for me. They're all here, she whispered. Your mother hasn't stopped pacing. Your father hasn't said a word. I nodded and walked straight into the study, where the lies had been curated for decades like heirlooms in glass cases. My father sat in his leather chair, frail, older than I remembered. His once commanding presence had dimmed. My mother stood by the fireplace. Vanessa wasn't there. This confrontation wasn't for her. I stood in the center of the room. You lied, I said plainly, for years, about everything. My father looked up. We were protecting you both. No, I said, voice steady. You were protecting yourselves, your image, your control. My mother's lips tightened. Celeste, it was complicated. It was cowardly. She flinched. You knew the will. You knew the bloodline clause. You knew Vanessa wasn't your biological daughter and you buried it. You raised her to inherit something that was never hers. And you let me grow up believing I didn't belong. Like I was less. The silence that followed was heavy, but I didn't stop. Now, I've seen the books, the lawsuits, the cover-ups. Vanessa didn't just mismanage the company, she corrupted it, but you allowed it. You let her operate unchecked while dismissing me as irrelevant. My father sighed. She was ambitious. She had the hunger. She had the fear, I snapped. She knew the truth might come out and she acted like someone who had something to prove, because she did. My mother finally spoke. So what now, Celeste? You take the company? Humiliate us publicly? Watch everything we built fall apart? I took a breath. I don't want revenge. I want accountability, transparency, and change. My father looked at me with something I hadn't seen in years, respect, maybe even regret. And you really think you can do it? I don't know, I admitted, but I know I'll do it honestly, and that's more than I can say for anyone else in this room. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. I'm taking over effective immediately. Harrington is drawing up the paperwork. From now on, Morgan Industries answers to me. My mother looked like she might collapse. Celeste, my father whispered, do it right. I will, I said without turning back. For the people, not for the name. And with that, the Morgan legacy officially entered a new era, mine. The first day I stepped into the Morgan Industries headquarters as its new CEO, the entire executive floor went silent, not because they respected me, but because they didn't know what to expect from the daughter they'd all conveniently ignored for years. Diana Fisher, my father's longtime executive assistant, greeted me with a polite but hesitant nod. Ms. Morgan, or would you prefer Celeste? Celeste is fine, I replied. But everything else? That's about to change. I spent the next 3 weeks buried in boardrooms, audit meetings, and confidential briefings with attorneys, accountants, and engineers. Every stone we overturned revealed more rot, ghost vendors, fake receipts, deliberately misfiled inspection reports, and most damning, construction shortcuts that could have cost lives. Some executives quit, others tried to intimidate me. One even laughed in my face, but I didn't flinch. I fired 3 department heads in my first week. I brought in independent safety inspectors and forensic accountants. And I did something my father and sister never dared. I called the Department of Labor myself. We submitted voluntary disclosures on all 17 lawsuits. We halted all ongoing projects flagged as unsafe. We offered full restitution to injured workers, no PR spin, no hush money. Just the truth. It hit the press like wildfire. Morgan heiress cleans house. New CEO vows reform from within. From gallery walls to job site grit, Celeste Morgan's unlikely rise. Not everyone was supportive. Investors panicked, social circles whispered, my mother refused to leave the house. But amidst the backlash, something else happened. People inside the company started to believe. Engineers I'd never met began showing up to meetings with real ideas. Floor managers who'd been afraid to speak up under Vanessa's rule now submitted proposals for change. A young site supervisor pulled me aside one day and said, "This is the first time I've felt safe telling the truth here." That moment meant more than any headline ever could. As for Vanessa, she stayed quiet. She hadn't spoken to me since our last encounter, but I knew she was watching, waiting, maybe even planning, but I wasn't playing defense anymore. I wasn't here to protect a broken legacy. I was here to rebuild it, brick by brick, from the inside out, with integrity as the foundation, not fear. 2 months into the reform, I asked Vanessa to meet me, not at the estate, not at the office, just a quiet bench in Riverside Park, where we used to feed ducks as kids before the weight of legacy turned us into rivals. She arrived late, as always, but not with her usual heels and designer coat. This time she wore sneakers, a plain sweater, and no makeup. She looked human, tired. "I thought you'd already taken everything," she said, sitting without looking at me. I didn't come to gloat, I replied. I came to offer you something. She laughed bitterly. You want to give me a second chance after I spent years cutting you out? Not because you deserve it, I said, but because I believe in fixing what's broken, even people. That made her pause. I continued, I'm offering you a role, Director of Client Relations. It's not a power position. You'll report to a board. You'll have oversight, but it's real work, and it matters. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were glassy. Why would you trust me with anything? I don't, I said honestly, but I'm choosing to believe you can be more than the person you became under all the lies. Vanessa swallowed hard. Do the others know? Number this is between us, for now. You'll have to earn back the company's trust on your own, one day at a time. She let out a breath. And if I say no? Then you walk away, and that's the end of it. Silence stretched between us, filled with years of resentment, misunderstanding, and wounds neither of us knew how to name. Finally, she whispered, I don't know if I can face them. The employees, the clients, the people I hurt. You can't undo the past, I said, but you can stop running from it. For a long time, she said nothing. Then slowly, tentatively, Vanessa nodded. All right, I'll try. As she stood to leave, I called after her. Vanessa. She turned. You were never my enemy. You just forgot who you were, because they made you believe you had to earn love to be worthy of it. For the first time in years, her expression softened. Not defensive, not jealous, just quiet. I wasn't the only one, she said, then walked away. That day, something shifted. Not just in her, but in me too. I hadn't come to crush her. I'd come to break the cycle, and for the first time, I felt like we both might be free. 1 year later, Morgan Industries didn't just survive, it evolved. We weren't the same company that had dominated headlines for corruption and cover-ups. We were leaner, smarter, cleaner. We sold off non-essential assets. We shuttered 3 failing divisions. We negotiated fair settlements with every worker who had been harmed under previous leadership. Some called it radical, others called it reckless. I called it necessary. The boardroom looked different now too. More women, more voices, less fear. And in the heart of the new leadership team sat someone no one expected to return, Vanessa. To her credit, she came back with humility. No entourage, no privilege, just her, a notepad, and a willingness to listen. She struggled in the beginning, avoiding eye contact, overcompensating, second-guessing everything. But over time, she found her rhythm. Vanessa had always been sharp with people, even when she used that skill to manipulate. Now, she used it to rebuild bridges, with clients, with former vendors, and slowly, with me. One afternoon, 6 months into her new role, she knocked on my door and handed me a client retention report. I skimmed it, then looked up. These numbers are solid, she shrugged. Turns out honesty works better than bribes. I smiled, surprised by the flicker of dry humor. That same day, our mother showed up at headquarters. She walked through the lobby like she'd never been there before, heels clicking, pearls in place, but something was different. Her posture wasn't proud, it was tentative. I wanted to see what you've built, she said. I took her on a quiet tour. No cameras, no speeches, just the truth. At the end, she stood in the new conference room, now named after my grandfather, Charles Morgan Sr., and whispered, I didn't know you had this in you. You never looked close enough, I said simply. To my surprise, she didn't get defensive. She just nodded, eyes misty. I made mistakes, Celeste, more than I can count. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll remember I came to see it for myself. And in that moment, for the first time in decades, I saw not the perfect socialite, but a woman who regretted more than she could say aloud. Later that night, Vanessa sent me a text. Mom just told me what you said. Thank you for giving us both a chance to be better. I stared at the message for a long time before replying, we all deserved better, It starts with us now. The company, the family, the story. It was no longer about legacy or bloodlines. It was about choice. And I was finally choosing differently. 2 years after everything unraveled, I stood in my office, once my father's, now fully mine, and looked at the 2 portraits on the wall. One was of my grandfather, Charles Morgan Sr., the man who'd believed in legacy with integrity. The other was of me. Not out of vanity, but as a reminder that I had reclaimed something never meant to be stolen, not just a company, but my place, my voice, my worth. Morgan Industries now stood for something new, not dominance, not fear, but responsibility and truth. We weren't the richest firm in the city anymore, but we were the most respected. And that meant more. My relationship with Vanessa remained complicated, but real. We didn't pretend. We just showed up as partners, as sisters, as 2 women trying to do better with the truth than anyone ever did with the lie. My mother still struggled, but in her own way, she began rebuilding too. She started a foundation supporting ethical adoption practices, a quiet atonement for the choices they made in silence. And me? I stopped chasing their approval. I stopped trying to shrink myself to fit into the space they left me. Instead, I built my own. I share this now because maybe, just maybe, someone watching needs to hear it. Blood doesn't define you, betrayal doesn't break you, and silence doesn't protect you. What matters is the moment you decide to stand up, not to be accepted, but to be true. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to like this video, subscribe, and share your own story in the comments. Because sometimes the most powerful legacy we can leave is the courage to rewrite the one we inherited. Until next time, this is Celeste Morgan, and this was the story of how I finally claimed my name.